Hi guys, Olive here today to do a Tipsy fiction book haul for you. I've done a few Tipsy videos in the past, but I realized I've never done a Tipsy book haul, and that seems like a crime. So today I will be showing you all of the fiction books that I have acquired recently while enjoying a glass of wine. The first book that I picked up is an extremely hyped book at the moment, and that is What We Lose by Zinzi Clemens. The publisher of this book, Viking Books, has been pushing this book extremely hard recently. I am not typically one to pick up a book that is very hyped at the moment, but this one sounded too interesting for me to pass up. This is about a young woman whose mother is originally from Johannesburg, South Africa, who is dealing with the loss of her mother from breast cancer, and is also dealing with her own forays into motherhood, trying to find love, trying to find a sisterhood amongst her friends. I just very recently finished this book and I'm going to be giving it a review here on this channel, so keep an eye out for that. The next book I have to show you is the first book I ever received as an unsolicited review copy from a publisher. That is Hum If You Don't Know the Words by Bianca Marais. This book is also set in Johannesburg, South Africa, and follows a 9-year-old white girl being raised in South Africa, as well as a Black mother struggling to raise her children alone. The lives of both this 9-year-old girl and of this single mother are irreversibly brought together after a Black student uprising alters the foundation upon which their society is constructed. This will be my random pick off of my TBR for July, and I'm extremely excited to get to this one. Next up, I have an ARC that Steve Donahue was kind enough to send me, and that is The Immortalist by Chloe Benjamin. This has been a book that I've been so excited to read ever since I first heard about it. I loved her first book, The Anatomy of Dreams, back in 2015. It was nearly one of my top books of the year, and so when I heard that she had a new book coming out, I knew I needed to get my hands on it. I tried every trick in the book to try to get my hands on an ARC of this without reaching out to Steve Donahue. But eventually he just got an ARC of this and I asked if I could have it. The plot of this book sounds absolutely amazing. It says, it's 1969 in New York City's Lower East Side, and word has spread of the arrival of a traveling psychic who claims to be able to tell anyone the day they will die. The Gold Children, 4 adolescents on the cusp of self-awareness, sneak out to hear their fortunes. Their prophecies inform their next 5 decades. Golden Boy Simon escapes to the West Coast, searching for love in 1980 San Francisco. Dreamy Clara becomes a Las Vegas magician, obsessed with blurring reality and fantasy. Eldest son Daniel seeks security as an army doctor post 9/11, hoping to control fate. And bookish Varya throws herself into longevity research, where she tests the boundary between science and immortality. A sweeping novel of remarkable ambition and depth, The Immortalist probes the line between destiny and choice, reality and illusion, this world and the next. It is a deeply moving testament to the power of story, the nature of belief, and the unrelenting pull of familial bond. This is one that I am super excited to read. It comes out in early January of next year, and I will definitely be doing a review of it. This summer, I have done quite a bit of traveling, and of course, in each destination, I have attempted to find bookstores to stop in and see if there's anything I'm interested in. Most recently, my husband and I went to a used bookstore in Cleveland, which is one of the coolest used bookstores I've ever been to. I first found out about this used bookstore that we visited from a newer booktuber called Rachel Ray. She travels a lot for work and attempts to go to cool bookstores in every location that she travels to. I saw her vlog at a store called Loganberry Books in Cleveland, and since I knew I was heading to Cleveland in the not too distant future, I knew I had to visit this bookstore. I will link her vlog down below if you'd like to see her experience in the used bookstore that I went to. And of course, I did have to pick up a few books. The first being The Passion Flower Hotel by Rosalind Erskine. When I first saw this book, I thought it was a vintage designed hardback, but no, this is a first edition 1962 hardcover in amazing condition. This is basically about a group of girls who open their own brothel in their proper English boarding school. Also, look at the naked hardback for this book. Why can't modern books have this gorgeous of a naked hardback? Also at Loganberry Books, I picked up The Toss of the Lemon by Padma Vishwanathan. This is an epic family saga set in India that is inspired by the author's own family history. To me, this book's plot seemed to be an examination of the way that the caste system affects family relationships, which was particularly interesting to me since I just recently finished A Fine Balance by Rohinton Mystery. So of course I had to pick this one up. I had to pick up Dragonwyck by Anya Seton. This was a book that Bree Hill recently read and absolutely loved, so I knew I had to pick up this gorgeous copy of it. This book follows an 18-year-old girl named Miranda. Bored of life on her family's farm, she accepts an offer from a distant relative to stay at their mansion, in which she is enraptured by the mansion's history and its secrets. I am so on board for any gothic tale about a big house. Another book I picked up at a different bookstore in Cleveland was Liquor by Poppy Z. Bright. This is about two friends in New Orleans who decide to open a restaurant together. This is about the misadventures that those two friends have to endure, the palms they have to grease, and the crooks they have to pacify in order to turn their dreams into a reality. The next book I have to show you is an ARC from Steve, and that is Death from St. Petersburg by Tasha Alexander. Being interested in Russia, this one is right up my alley. Plus, it comes out on my wedding anniversary, 10/4. The next book I have to show you needs no introduction, and that is The Essex Serpent by Sarah Perry. The whole of BookTube is enamored by this book at the moment, and though I typically get the heebie-jeebies when it comes to hyped books, this has always sounded like something I'd really enjoy. So I picked it up. Also, the lovely folks at Fourth Estate Books sent me an art copy of The Party by Elizabeth Day. I did a whole review on that book that I'll link down below. But when they sent me that review copy, they also included this hardback edition of Standard Deviation by Catherine Haney. This is a book about a man who divorces his first wife only to remarry a woman who is his first wife's polar opposite. Finding himself overwhelmed by his second wife's boisterous personality, his first wife re-enters his life and he finds himself questioning whether or not he made the right decision in divorcing her. Next up, I have quite a few books that I have found at used bookstores and at used book sales over the past few months. The first book being Misfortune by Wesley Stace. This is a book about a wealthy lord who finds the answers to his prayers in a trash heap outside of London. It's an abandoned baby who he plans to adopt and make the heir to his estate. He does adopt this baby and decides to name her Rose after his deceased but beloved sister, and decides to raise his new daughter in excess. There's only one problem. Although this lord desperately wanted a daughter, Rose is actually a boy, and this is a revelation that infuriates the extended family. Amid this tumult, Rose flees the situation and decides to find out his own identity. The next book I picked up at a used bookstore is The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. Around the end of 2016, I got this book on NetGalley, and I have since realized that I am the worst at NetGalley and I'm going to stop requesting books from there because I can't keep up. Although I'm the worst at NetGalley, I did still want to read this book, and so I picked it up when I saw it available at a used bookstore. This is a fantasy book based on Russian folk tales. I would say it's highly improbable that I won't love it, but I do think I'm going to save this book for the winter time. The next used book I picked up is Johannes Cabal and the Fear Institute by Jonathan L. Howard. Since the time I bought this book, I found out that this is the third book in a fantasy series, and so I will need to read the previous two before I move on to this one. This is a book about a necromancer who is being employed by an organization called the Fear Group, who is leading an expedition into a world formed by dreams. The next book I picked up is called The Eternophiles by Liana Renee Heber. This says, the assassination of Abraham Lincoln spurred a secret group within the American government to attempt to bestow both invulnerability and immortality on the country's leader. Creating Eterna required the services of scientists and theologians, magicians, and philosophers. Their research is on the brink of bearing fruit when the entire team is wiped out in a single, otherworldly stroke. Next, I picked up The Blazing World by Siri Hustvedt. This is a book about a female artist who is very tired of having her work overlooked because she is a female. Because of this, she recruits 3 different men to claim her work as their own, intending to step forward as the true artist during a showcase. However, one of these 3 men betrays her, starting a dangerous game that ends in death. Next up, I have When the Doves Disappeared by Sophie Oksanen. This book is set between 1941 and 1963 in Estonia. The beginning of this novel chronicles the lives of 2 men who are fleeing the Red Army. We then fast forward to the 1960s, where this book shows how these same 2 men are both surviving and keeping secrets under Soviet rule. Next up is a book called The Bestiary by Nicholas Christopher. This is a book about a young man who goes on a quest around the world seeking a lost medieval text that supposedly details mystic animals that were not granted passage on Noah's Ark. The next book I have to show you is Lit Life by Kurt Wenzel. This book takes place in both Manhattan and the Hamptons and follows two different writers. It seems totally pretentious and I can't wait to read it. The next book I have to show you is The Bastard of Istanbul by Elif Shafak. This is about a 19-year-old woman who is living with her extended family in Istanbul. This young woman's brother is living in America, married to an American woman who had a daughter through a previous marriage to an Armenian man. This Armenian-American daughter secretly decides to fly to Istanbul to connect with a part of her identity that she feels is missing. There she starts to connect with her family in Istanbul, particularly her aunt, who is about the same age as her. The next book I picked up is English Passengers by Matthew Neal. This is historical fiction set in 1857 and follows a crew of rum smugglers. The next book I picked up is Moth and Spark by Anne Leonard. This is a book whose plot involves dragons that I think will be perfect when I'm in a good fantasy mood. This next one is a book that I finally gave in and bought, and that's Geek Love by Catherine Dunn. This is about a carnival family who intentionally had children that would be considered freaks by, let's just say, interfering with their pregnancies. For whatever reason, I had it in my head that I absolutely would not enjoy this book, but I've decided to give it a try. The next book I picked up is called BioShock Rapture by John Shirley. I absolutely love the story of the BioShock games, and from what I've heard, this book perfectly bridges the gap between the first BioShock game and the second BioShock game. I have also heard that it's extremely well done, so I'm looking forward to reading this. The next book I picked up is River of Smoke by Amitav Ghosh. This book is the sequel to Sea of Poppies, which you might see right behind me. I've not yet read that book, but considering this book was only 50 cents at the particular book sale I found it at, I am fairly confident I will really like Sea of Poppies, and so I thought it couldn't hurt anything to pick up its sequel. The next book I have to show you has possibly my favorite cover of all time, and that's Villette by Charlotte Bronte. I've heard several people say that this book by Charlotte Bronte is even better than Jane Eyre, and considering how much I love Jane Eyre, I'm dying to read this one. The next book I have to show you is the first book in the Hollow Gods series, and that is The Smiler's Fair by Rebecca Levine. I think I first heard about this book from Mercedes from Mercy's Bookish Musings, and one blurb on the back of this book says that this is as if The Night Circus was written by George R.R. Martin, and I am so on board for that. The next book I have to show you is Children of the Alley. This is a book that was first published in Arabic in 1959. From what I read about this book, this is both the story of an Egyptian family as well as a spiritual history of humankind. The next book I have to show you is She Flew the Coop by Michael Lee West. It seems like this book and the next one, which is La Cucina, a Novel of Rapture by Lily Pryor, both mimic Like Water for Chocolate. The previous dealing with Louisiana, and this one dealing with Sicily. Speaking of Italy, I won The House at the Edge of Night by Catherine Banner. This book is about a struggling family living on an island off of the coast of Italy. It seems absolutely beautiful. And the last books I have to show you are brought home from my childhood collection when I went through some of my old books. The first book being White Oleander by Janet Fitch. I'm not the biggest fan of this cover, but I do know that this book deals with the foster system, which I'm extremely interested in reading about. And the last books I have to show you in this haul are the entire Anne of Green Gables series by L.M. Montgomery. I read these all as a child and absolutely love them, and I'm really happy to have them back in my possession now. So those were all the fiction books that I've acquired recently. If you've read any of these, heard of any of them, or have enjoyed any of them, I would love to hear from you in the comment section below, or you can find me a variety of different places on social media. The links to all of my profiles are in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.